I chose to research social constructions within domestic violence, which led to a society that normalizes intimate partner violence. To begin, IPV is physical, sexual, and emotional violence, along with stalking and isolating a former or current intimate partner. Warning signs of an abuser include belittling the act of violence, blaming violent behavior on things like stress, work, family, drugs, or alcohol, expressing extreme jealousy, being possessive, controlling, demeaning, and unpredictable. Abusers also isolate survivors from friends and family, and they also have an uncontrollable temper. Abuse tends to occur in a cycle. First, tension builds, which includes arguing, irritability, and small outbursts. Second, the explosion stage occurs, which is just the act of violent behavior. Third, the honeymoon stage, which includes apologies, promises of change, and the tension tends to fade. Each phase isn't limited to a time frame, however, they will tend to repeat over and over. The U.S. passed the Violence Against Women's Act in 1994. This act states that IPV is considered a felony or misdemeanor committed by a current or ex-boyfriend, girlfriend, or spouse. This act was the beginning of any formal legal protection for victims of domestic violence. With that being said, it is important to keep tabs on the values of other countries that our nation communicates with. Due to relevance, Russia currently adjusted the domestic violence law. Russian parliament adopted a law to decriminalize the first offense of domestic violence that doesn't cause enough physical harm to hospitalize the victim. Putin signed this into law on February 7th of 2017. It's important to be informed on political and current events internationally to question how our government is able to avoid value conflict and connect with other countries on a personal value-driven level. National statistics show that on average, 1 in 9 men and 1 in 4 women are survivors of IPV. Specifically, 1 in 6 men and 1 in 3 women are sexually abused by a partner, and 1 in 7 men and 1 in 4 women are physically abused. Violence even occurs in younger populations. Before the age of 18, 8.5 million women and 1.5 million men experience rape. 3.5 million women and 1 million men are stalked. Personally, I chose to focus on quantitative research. I collected data from a survey I made and posted on social media networks. Of my results, out of 81 participants, 16% were survivors, and 3.7% are possibly a survivor. Out of the survivors, 21.5% identified as female and 1.3% identified as male. Out of the survivors, 16.7% left on their own, 1.3% left with the help of a friend or family member, and 2.6% haven't left the abuser, and none of them took legal action. A few things stuck out. 1, we can see that as a society we hide this topic. There are more people than we realize who don't have the information they should have to know what IPV is and how to tell what is abuse versus what is not. 2, men are survivors too. Male survivors are often overlooked and not taken seriously. Domestic violence happens to everyone. Men are also less likely to report in fear of backlash being worse than just being abused. Is this a world we want to live and raise future generations in? 3, of the victims, no one took legal action. Should we be questioning what needs to change in the legislative system so victims feel safe and comfortable enough to take legal action? In my survey, I emphasized parenting. Many people question, why can't people just not abuse to begin with? Parenting can have a subtle effect. As a society, some parents unintentionally tend to overlook how intelligent young children are. Dismissing bad behavior by saying boys will be boys, they're just rowdy and wild, or girls are just catty and say mean things sometimes, you just have to ignore it, implies this idea that these behaviors are normal and you just have to brush it off. 8.6% of parents that took my survey have made statements like this. Childhood media can also impact the normalization of domestic violence. Beauty and the Beast subtly implies this idea. The Beast isolates Bella from her family, locks her in a cage, and is very aggressive, but that's okay because she falls in love with him. The majority of parents who took my survey exposed their child to this type of media but took the time to explain what was going on. In second place, 19% said they exposed them to it, they're just children. With a tie of 14.3%, Parents either did not expose their children to this type of media, or they did and only talked about it if the child initiated the conversation. Here is an ad from the Australian government called Stop It at the Start.
You pop those down there. You're okay. Just did it because he likes you.
Don't try like a girl, mate. Come on.
Yes.
Why are you doing it? You're okay. He loves you. What do you mean?
Violence against women starts with disrespect. The excuses we make allow it to grow. Violence against women. Let's stop it at the start.
Many participants wanted to know more about community programs. Assuming most of my participants were from Delaware and Henry County, I listed programs for the two areas. Ball State offers an advocacy for domestic violence on the second floor of the health center. Here you can find more information and support without them being required to report the abuse to Title IX. Muncie offers a shelter called A Better Way. Newcastle has an advocacy called Safe at Home. Marion County has several, but listed are the Julian Center and the Indiana Coalition Against Domestic Violence, and they can actually help find shelters closer to your living area if possible. The link here, posted, lists all of the shelters in Indiana, where they are located, what they provide, and contact information. With this being said, immediate safety would be immediately calling the police. They can help you relocate and create a plan for safety. I wanted to make this presentation oriented around awareness. I had short answer questions in my survey for participants to have a voice of their own. If I didn't answer questions that with the material and research I had prior to the survey, I took a step further to make sure I gave feedback to every participant. Many questions were repeated or similar, so I combined some to save space. First, the most affected demographic would be women between the ages of 18 and 24. Second, domestic violence happens due to a desire to gain and maintain power and control. Third, people stay for many reasons. Some include, but aren't limited to, emotions, children, and fear. At one point, the survivor did fall in love, and that can easily create excuses for behavior. Until a child is proven injured, an abuser still has a legal right to unsupervised time with them. A victim may stay to protect their children. They may have a mindset like, I'd rather be hit than my child be hit. At least while I'm here, I can control that. Survivors might also stay out of fear. Some cases show that abusers still harass the survivor after they escape. Also, they might just be financially dependent on the abuser and may not have an option. Fourth, on average, 20 people are affected every minute. This equates to over 10 million survivors each year. Fifth, the United States Department of Justice focuses on domestic violence. They offer training and awareness. However, I think it's always important to look into what our national leaders have on their agenda. It's important to make sure they value awareness and protection. Every vote is a footstep into a direction that you want. Sixth, studies show among the LGBT community show that stats are just as high, and in some situations higher than the general population. Seventh, I think domestic violence is stigmatized because we have a lack of awareness and education on the issue. It's easy to judge without knowing what's really going on. Personally, you can help by being informed on local, state, and national politics. Also, be aware of domestic violence being an important issue and always be open to listen when someone tries to tell you something. Seventh, technically, once you call the police, legal protection should happen. Filing reports, seeking information, and just letting people know about it helps. Eighth, violence can be influenced by previous generations. If a child witnesses violence, they're more likely to repeat this cycle. I found a trend of changes that participants wanted to see. Pictured here is the list. Most generally, They want more education, awareness, and protection for every case, along with wanting more updated laws. Here is a list from my survey of things survivors want others to know. Every voice matters, and I believe that it is important for everyone watching this to take a minute without me talking to soak up what each survivor wants to be known. Empathize and imagine if this were you, would you want to be heard?